Hello, welcome to anyone coming in. We're really excited to get started today. So as you come in, feel free to pop in the chat where you're joining us from. I think the chat should be enabled. Connecticut, hello, Rachel from Connecticut. Glad to have you. Appleton, Wisconsin. Wow, welcome. So good to be here. I'm calling in from New Hampshire. It's nice and sunny today, although yesterday it was snowing. Oh, from Atlanta, Georgia, welcome. Cindy from New York, welcome. Glad to have you all here. We'll get started in just a minute or so. Give it a second for everyone to come in. Julie in NYC. Hi, Julie. If you are here, greetings from the East Coast. Hello. If you're here for the Navigating Festive Food Frustration webinar, you are in the right place. We're so glad to have you, and we can't wait to get started. Give it one more minute, and then we will get going. Welcome, everyone. So glad to have you. All right. And as we're getting started here, throughout this webinar, feel free to share any questions or comments in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen or the chat. We will have time throughout to answer questions along with time at the end. So make sure you are, staying involved and getting any questions you have answered. All right, let's get started. So hello and welcome to this Balance webinar, Expectation versus Reality, Navigating Festive Food Frustration. Thank you so much for taking the time to log on today. Just by tuning in, you are putting energy toward learning about yourself and getting the support that you or someone you know may need. And we are so happy to have you with us. I'm Alexandra. I am a content creator here at Balance, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. So just a bit about Balance. Balance is a premier eating disorder treatment facility that offers boutique outpatient treatment options using evidence-based practices to provide customized care that best fits you and your loved ones in recovery. And now I'd like to introduce the staff that's here with us today for this webinar. So there we go. So joining us today is Ekin, who is an intake coordinator here at Balance, and myself. I am Alexandra. Like I said, Balance's content creator. And as we move through the presentation today, like I said before, feel free to share any thoughts or reactions that you may have in the chat. Or in the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. Ekin and I will be watching both sections to make sure that all your questions get answered along the way. Plus, there's some time set aside at the end for questions as well. And now I want to introduce our presenter for today. Staci Abby is a program and admission therapist here at Balance and is a licensed creative arts therapist. She has previous experience working with individuals living with severe and persistent mental health diagnoses. Staci thoroughly aligns with the Health at Every Size approach, as well as the All Foods Fit model, and is a member of the Association for Size, Diversity, and Health. She strongly believes in the use of drama therapy in eating disorder recovery to create a strong relationship with both body, mind, and emotions. Staci is passionate about working collaboratively with clients during their recovery journey and strives to foster a supportive space of trust, safety, and rapport. Thank you so much for joining us today, Staci. This is going to be a fantastic webinar, and I will hand it over to you now.
All right, Alexandra, thank you so much for that great introduction. As Alexandra said, my name is Staci, and I highly encourage you to interact with us in the chat if anything comes up. Well, like Alexandra said, we'll be monitoring it and would love to hear from you. So to get us started today, we're going to talk about kind of what we're going to do during this webinar. So our goals for today is we're going to learn how holiday pressures might be affecting you, understand our experiences with social eating as well as body image, and identify the difference between expectations and realities and how that really impacts our holiday season. I want to help cultivate a positive atmosphere throughout the holiday and get practical tools for support and moving forward. And we're going to do this by discussing the stress and pressures that you might experience during this time of year. We're going to talk about social eating during the holidays and how that does become a pretty normal thing to do during the holidays. Want to work on understanding our body cues, our experiences, our emotions, our values, all of those things that make us us and unique. We're also going to work on reframing the meaning of holidays to reflect our reality and what we want those to be. So before we get too into our PowerPoint or our presentation, I want to talk about the importance of diversity. I want to focus on how many of the holidays in our culture that we discuss are focused on Anglo-Saxon holidays. So we start off with Halloween, which is already passed, and then we go into holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. But I really want to talk about the importance of recognizing multiple cultural holidays. So other holidays that are celebrated during this time, Hanukkah, Diwali, Ramadan, Kwanzaa. I really want to just give space for all of the different cultures celebrating holidays during this time. And I want to say that Festive Food Frustration is not exclusive to a certain culture, religion, race, or group. And it really does span throughout all cultures and all societies. All right, so with that being said, expectations. How do we understand festive frustration? And I want to start by talking about seasonal overwhelm. What is seasonal overwhelm, right? So we're talking about all of the events and experiences that come up during the holiday season, how they can feel extremely overwhelming. There becomes a large focus on seeing people, being more social, seeing people that we haven't seen in a long time, and some anxieties that can bring up. There's also a focus on what do we wear? It's getting colder, at least in New York. I know a lot of people typed in there coming from different places, but the weather's changing. And so there becomes a lot of focus on socially eating and going out with people, which can lead up a lot of body image distress as well. And any other overwhelming concepts that come with the holiday times. So one of the things that really comes up during this season is food, right? A lot of our holidays are focused around food and eating and gathering, especially during this time. So a lot of times this food can feel really special, right? Because it's the recipe that grandma used to make, or it's something we can do with our loved ones to cook or make, or we all get to sit down together over a meal that feels really special to this time of year. But just as special as it can be to some folks, to some people, it can be really stressful being around an abundance of food and feeling, again, really overwhelmed with how much is there and just feeling really stressful during this time. We also find that comments about body image and size is at a all-time yearly high. So our society has really normalized commenting on people's bodies and what we're wearing. And we really just want to make this aware to people because this is something we really want to avoid talking about. It can be really upsetting for some folks, right? We oftentimes also romanticize holiday foods. We were talking about these foods feeling really special, which can cause an increase of food anxiety. This can lead to feeling out of control and even normalizing some binge eating behavior. Another really overwhelming part of the holiday seasons can be routine changes. I think we went one slide past. There we go. Nope, routine change. There we go, perfect. All right. So something that does also come up for us over the holidays is schools closed or works closed, or maybe we go virtual for a period of time. So there can be a disruption in our schedule, which can feel really overwhelming and out of control. It can lead to an increased feeling of uncertainty and amplified stress. It can also change, since you're changing your daily activities, right? You're around more people, which can lead to even more heightened feelings of comparison and judging yourself to somebody, to what they're wearing, to what they're doing. So it leads to a lot of increased comparison and concerns about food and body. Can also take away from the festive feeling, right? So holidays are meant to be fun and about connections, but sometimes it can just feel really overwhelming, especially when we're not feeling what we're supposed to feel, right? What expectations have we or have other people set for this holiday? And are we living up to that or not? All right. And then the final point that I want to make about seasonal overwhelm is New Year's is right around the corner, right? So we talk about Thanksgiving, Halloween, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, all of those holidays that are coming up are shadowed by the new year. We often hear the phrase, right, new year, new me, that leads a lot of our resolutions to be based around body image or this concept of health, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but can really lead to this cycle of leading to restrictive eating. So we're really aware of how the new year is going to be affecting us after this holiday season. It sometimes can take away the opportunity for us to be able to reflect and inspire. And we miss the opportunities to be with our loved ones and be present. All right. Cultural expectations can impact how we celebrate the holiday season. We can sometimes leave you feeling left out of control, or out of your comfort zone. So we're going to talk about a couple of expectations that might be set and how we can kind of navigate through that, or what they might mean for us. So the first thing I really want to touch on is this idea of the dieting cycle. Is anyone familiar with the dieting cycle? You can raise your hand, pop it in the chat. Yeah. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, or who want a little bit of a refresh, it's this idea that's widely accepted in our culture, right? It's dieting is seen as a way to manage your health, but it can be really dangerous and really harmful for some people. So the cycle kind of starts, it can start anywhere in the cycle, right? It's a circle, so it has no beginning, no end. But we'll start, for ease of understanding, we'll start at the top. So the first one is feeling out of control and feeling maybe that's a loss of routine or comments that have been made, but really feeling out of control. So start dieting to regain that control. Dieting can really look like, restricting food. It can be working out. That can oftentimes lead to feeling deprived, right? If our bodies aren't getting what we're craving or what we wanted, we're keeping something from it, can lead us to feeling an overwhelming urge to eat. Our bodies want that food. And if we're keeping it from it, we're really gonna wanna give our bodies those opportunities. So unfortunately, this can then lead to binging episodes, feeling really out of control around food, trying to eat as much of that food you've been restricting, or any other foods that you're around, right? Which can lead to then feeling really out of control again. Yeah, and I do see someone commenting in the chat. It can also be about feeling inferior, reading something and gaining motivation. Absolutely. Yeah. It can, anything can kind of start this cycle. The New Year's can start this cycle. It can be that someone made a comment to you. Can be that you've, like you said, feeling really motivated to do something. Reading something or seeing something in social media that makes you feel inferior. Doesn't always have to be about control. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Thank you so much for bringing that point in. All right. So the next point that we're going to discuss about maybe some cultural expectations that we might have for ourselves or from other people is pressure from family. Family, friends, loved ones, whoever you celebrate the holidays with, can really add another level of expectations and stress. I know, everyone's family dynamic is extremely different. Everyone has a different relationship with their loved ones. They're all unique, but we want to recognize and validate those. Sometimes it can feel stressful to be around people, especially when they have a different expectation for you or something different they want for your life than you want for your own life. We also can find it really easy to lean into people pleasing tendencies during the holidays. There is a large emphasis on giving during the holidays, and sometimes we give so much that we forget to give to ourselves. So we can really lean into, um, emptying our cup and not having it refilled as much. We oftentimes forget our own needs and desires. And these can manifest with, again, trying to use food, obligations, body, or accomplishments. It can really be expectations for anything. It doesn't just have to be around food. I see in the chat from Kitty, she said, "This is one of my favorite holidays, except for the food." Yeah. So that expectation of for yourself, what you want to eat can be really hard, especially when you feel like you have other things that are present for you. It can lead to feeling really isolated and feeling really alone, and that can be really hard. Thank you for sharing that, Kitty. I think that's a really good point that sometimes people forget, is that people do have other dietary restrictions, and we put such an emphasis on food that if you don't lean in or don't fit into this style or this expectation, can feel really isolating. We also can talk about comparing ourselves to other people, right? So as we were kind of saying, during the holidays, we are around people. And so it's easier to, once you see more people and you are around like larger crowds, it can be really easy to compare, especially around food. It can be really easy to compare what you're eating, how much, how little you're eating, and seeing other people and comparing yourself to that. And it's really hard to get stuck in that comparison. And again, we're bringing in this expectation of how we're supposed to feel. We have this idea that the holidays are supposed to be joyous and merry and happy. And that's not always accurate. Sometimes it can bring up sadness. It can bring up frustration, but it can also bring up joy. But there's not a lot of space for negatively perceived emotions or things that might be harder to talk about or to hold. So it can oftentimes be really hard when you see other people maybe putting on a mask of being happy, or that they are happy. It can be really hard and you feel like you're comparing to that. Or even just seeing someone in a dress that you might like and thinking about, oh, what if I put that on? What would that look like? And can lead to a spiral. So we really want to try to focus on being as present as possible in the moment. And again, leaning back into what we want our holidays to look like instead of focusing on this comparison. I want to pause here and I want to check up on the chat. I know a couple people are chatting back and forth.
Yeah, so we have two really great questions in the Q&A, Staci. The first is how to ease anxiety with sensory overload from other people's food during the holidays.
Yeah, can I ask for a little bit of clarification if they're comfortable of, is that a sensory overload? You're experiencing the sensory overload and seeing other people engage in other foods is overwhelming for you?
Let's see. Hopefully they'll let us know in the chat, but I do think that that is something that we're talking a lot about in the chat is having dietary restrictions
Yes.
due to medical issues or other issues that are making the food a difficult part of the holidays.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of frustration and hard experiences around pushing eating what you can't have. And I'm wondering if you could maybe offer to bring a dish that you're comfortable making and preparing yourself so that you know that you have an option that feels good for you. The smell or the look of it bothers you. Yeah, and that can be really hard when you have sensory concerns being around people that that are engaging in meals that are hard for you. One idea that comes to mind is if you have a loved one or a support person or a couple of people that are around you, maybe you can ask them to sit next to you and maybe ask if they would be comfortable. We don't want to ask or tell people what to eat, but ask if they would feel comfortable maybe saving other foods that make you feel a little uncomfortable until after you've left the table, and seeing if they can really be that support for you in that moment. Or I don't know how comfortable you feel hosting, or there's options we'd love to continue to discuss with you about bringing your own food or preparing something that's feels good for you, and also opening up to others and sharing what's important to you with other people. I also encourage everyone who's ever experienced something like this to pop into the chat if you have any suggestions or anything that you've experienced like that as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. Another question that we have in the Q&A is, do you have any tips on making more time to eat frequent meals, such as reminders or apps?
Yeah, so I don't know if I've ever used a specific app for that, but most phones have alarm clocks. So something that has been pretty beneficial that we've seen here at Balance is setting an alarm, maybe at a time, maybe in intervals, check in at whatever time, and recovery. Yeah, recovery record is an option as well. We do use that at Balance. I didn't forget about that. So recovery record can do that, as well as the alarms on your phone. You can also set reminders and intervals to kind of check in with yourself and see, okay, am I feeling hungry now? Okay, maybe I should engage in a snack, and reminding yourself to eat, because sometimes we don't have we're not in tune with our hunger and fullness cues, but we still want to make sure that we're getting that nutrition in. Having a friend check in with you is also a really great way. Also, if you have any supports, a dietitian, any outpatient therapist, anything like that, they can, maybe you can have your session around a time that's really hard for you to eat lunch, so you can have, or eat a meal. So you can have that support as well. But yeah, recovery record is really great, and setting an alarm. So yeah, I see both of those in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you. That is all the questions that I'm seeing in the Q&A. And I think you touched on everything that is going on in the chat, but I will keep you posted as more questions come up.
Great. All right. Well, let's go on to the next section. So the expectation problem, why it's really important. So we talked a little bit about what those expectations are, if we set them for ourselves, what other people might have set for us. Why is it really important? So I first want to talk about diet culture. I know I brought it up a couple of times, but I'm going to give you a basic description for those of you who might not be as familiar with it. So diet culture can be described as a system of beliefs and socially accepted behaviors that prioritize body weight and size over health and well-being. So diet culture not only comes from our society, right? We see it on social media, we see it on TVs, movies, shows, can also come into our family dynamics. It's been so ingrained in us as a culture that it can be really hard to separate from. One thing about diet culture is it is extremely oppressive and exclusive. Again, it can keep you in this cycle of expectation versus reality, because diet culture sets certain expectations for us that can really take away the joy and the happiness that we're feeling during a time that's supposed to be seen as celebratory and happy. All right, so expectation versus reality. We often have this idea of what we want our holidays to look like. We want them to be happy, we want them to be healthy. But like we were saying earlier, it's okay if it's not. This is often a misunderstanding of what's important. Sometimes we lose what's important. There's this idea too of finding a balance between enjoying and indulging. But what does that mean to you? How do you understand how that's important to you? So what is really important to you during the holiday season, right? I encourage everyone to take some time before entering into events or really overwhelming times, taking a few moments to yourself to really explore what you want out of the holiday season. If anyone's thinking of anything, please feel free to pop it in the chat what holiday season might mean for you. Some of the experiences or some of the values that we came up with are connection, experiences, and compassion, but it can be anything that you want the holidays to be, right? Connecting with loved ones, or sharing family traditions that are really important. Yeah, I see in the chat we're talking about family and friends. Yeah, what are you grateful for, right? Thanksgiving is about being thankful for things. So looking at what we are grateful for. Connecting with loved ones. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And for those of you who had a little bit of a more difficult time thinking of what the holidays means for you, I also want to say that that's okay. Sometimes we've been so bogged down that it's hard to really understand what the holidays mean for us. And I really encourage you to continue to explore that and think about it. And if you like to journal, maybe doing a journal prompt or exercise about what's important to you during the holiday season. And then one thing that I also want to really focus on is the holidays are not about control. So a lot of the times, like we were speaking about, this new year, new you mentality with fad dieting, it can promote this feeling of self-comparison, but that's almost what society and commercialism has kind of been telling us, right? We really see new year, new you, or come join our gym at this discount for the new year. And that's not what the holidays are about. They can be if that's what it's about for you, but I also encourage you to really explore that. But it's not about finding control. It's about really finding those connections and finding your values, finding that gratitude that you mentioned in the chat. We do find that eating disorders can often flourish, not all the time, but they do sometimes flourish when an individual feels a lack of control. They can really rely on food or the lack of food to feel like they have regained that control, which can again really be seen during the holiday seasons. We can see the need for control over self, life, body is a really large contributing factor in eating disorders. All right, so navigating our expectations for a recovery-focused reality. Like we've been talking about, we want to redefine the holidays, or maybe we feel like we have had a really good experience with the holidays before. But I want to ask these questions. I know they're large questions. I know they seem really, really daunting, but I just want to put them in the ether for everyone to kind of think about as we continue into the next part of the discussion. So how do we define what it means to us individually to reframe our expectations? What do we want? What do our expectations mean to us? And how can you make your holidays about that experience? Can you add in any activities that would really lead up and show the value of what you want for your holidays? Can you create experiences with others that really, really, really reflect your expectation and what holidays mean to you? So I want to take a moment here to talk about how powerful everyone is. We have the power to decide what's important to us. Everyone has their own unique experiences and everyone has their own values. It can be really scary to ground yourself in reality, let go of those expectations when it feels foreign or unknown. But you get to define your reality. You can recenter what your holidays look like and get the support wherever you are, from friends, from loved ones, from your outpatient team, if you have one, from any type of support system. But you have the power to do that. What can you do to get back to your reality? So I really want to honor where we are. Everyone's going through a different life journey. Everyone is experiencing something different, and everyone's experience is valid. Again, we talked about this idea of the holidays being perfect, but they don't have to be perfect. Feeling uncomfortable, feeling sad, that's okay. Those are valid fears or valid emotions. Feeling fear is a valid emotion. So we really want to take a moment to honor where we're at. I also want to say that we can feel joy and sadness at the same time, and we can honor that as well. We can feel overwhelmed and excited at the same time, and that's okay as well. What's really important is that we find time to take care of ourselves and what we really need and honor where we're at and what we're feeling. I also want everyone to remember that you are not alone. Sometimes an eating disorder can feel really isolating. Many of you are talking about it in the chat of feeling like it's a really hard time for you to be around others because food sensory concerns or not wanting to eat with loved ones or smells being really overwhelming. Sometimes you want to eat by yourself with an eating disorder. It's going to all really lead to feeling isolated. But I really, really, really want everyone to know that you're not alone. If you have a really great support system, I really highly encourage you to lean on them. Oops, sorry. Instead of getting used to this feeling of dread or feeling like it's uncomfortable and you can't stand it any longer, really encourage you to reach out for support if you have energy. If you don't have the energy, that's okay too. Maybe you can ask for a friend to help you, or you can reach out to someone that you feel comfortable with to sit and really help you research resources that can be really beneficial for you. There's also a lot of groups that can help with managing these expectations and building coping skills. There's a myriad of support groups. NAMI or offers the National Association for Mental Illness offers support groups. So there are supports out there that you can find, even if sometimes you are feeling like you can't rely on your support system, your loved ones, or your friends. So some of the things that I also wanted to focus on are coming up with practical tools to help support you during this time of feeling really overwhelmed. So things that you can put in your toolbox and bring out whenever you feel like you need them. So we're going to go over how your support's going to help you. We're going to talk about taking space when needed, talk about using maybe a grounding object, and setting boundaries when possible. We're going to start with boundaries. I feel like we talk about boundaries in our society a lot, and I feel like they do kind of get romanticized, and sometimes we're like, oh, we need to set boundaries. But boundaries are really important, right? We can set time limits and time boundaries. We can set space boundaries. We can set physical boundaries, right? There's a bunch of different ways to set boundaries. So it's really important for you to feel safe during the holidays, no matter what the situation is, right? Safety is always a number one priority. I encourage you to be an advocate for yourself and ask for help when needed. Again, kind of maybe knowing in the back of your mind who you feel safe going to and really using them as that support to help you implement these boundaries if you're having a really hard time doing that yourself. And again, working with your support team to define boundaries around the holiday. So if you're having a little bit of a concern, you're like, well, what does this boundary mean? Or this person, I have a really hard time being around them. What would be a really beneficial boundary? Your team can really help you prepare that. And I want to take a second to go over what a support team can kind of look like. So like I mentioned, there are support groups that you can find. We would always be happy to give you some referrals as well. You can reach out. But I know NAMI offers free support groups. There's also programs, right? Outpatient programs that can really help you if you are really struggling. A dietitian can be part of your treatment team, therapist, psychiatrist, a recovery coach. If anybody else has any ideas about supports or who can be on your support team, feel free to pop them in the chat. But that is kind of what a treatment team looks like, to really help support you and really help provide what you need during this time. All right. Yeah. The next thing I want to focus on is taking up space. I want to talk about taking up space as well as giving space. When you feel like you're really overwhelmed, take the space that you need. Take a walk if you need to, especially when your boundaries are being pushed, right? So taking space can mean, or can look like taking a walk if you have the chance, going outside just to get some fresh air, maybe coming up or having a couple of predetermined excuses to get out of a conversation, like, oh, I'm so sorry, I need to go refill my water, or I told so-and-so I would go check in with them. Coming up with kind of a safety plan. And also, I know music can be really beneficial, so finding time and space to listen to a song that's really important for you, right? If you go outside listening to a song that brings calming or brings grounding, or it explains the situation you're going through and can feel really connected to. I want to reiterate here to not to be afraid of asking for what you need. Another thing that can be really beneficial is finding a grounding object. I know fidget spinners had a hot, hot little time in the spotlight for a while, but they can be really beneficial, right? If you are feeling really overwhelmed, sometimes doing something with your hands can be really helpful. So keeping something like a lucky penny with you, or a fidget spinner, a crystal, they make really cool rings that have fidgets on them that you can spin around your finger. So if you oftentimes feel like using your hands can be really beneficial and grounding for you, highly encourage you. It doesn't have to be something that is easily noticed by other people either, right? It can be something you keep in your pocket. It can be a necklace that you keep on your neck. It can be something that's really individual and personalized for you. All right, we've talked about this one a little bit, but we want to talk about electing a support person. So someone that you do feel really comfortable with. Maybe if you're having a hard time getting away from a conversation that's triggering or upsetting for you, you have a code word or a look or something that you can do with that support person that can really help come and calm you and bring you out of the moment. It's always beneficial, of course, if this is someone that you can trust, or someone who is aware of kind of what's going on, what makes you uncomfortable, what sensory concerns you might be having. And I encourage you to have a discussion beforehand with this person so they know how they can help you in the moment, and let them know what's really beneficial for you. I also want to take a moment here to say that a lot of programs, a lot of therapists, a lot of offices do have on-call numbers. So I know that a lot of offices are closed for holidays during the holiday season, but I encourage you to ask your providers or your supports if they do have an emergency contact or an on-call that you can call if you need support when offices aren't open. I know that's something that we do here at Balance, and it's really important that a lot of other mental health facilities do as well, because like I said, safety is always the number one importance. So I really encourage you to get that number and have it accessible. All right, pause here again for any questions. I got a little distracted, so I'm going to follow up in the chat really quick too.
Yeah. We have a great question from Eddie in the Q&A asking if you can offer some tips on how to emotionally support an adult loved one during this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want support like in the moment? It could be asking if they're okay, just checking in with them. You always want to ask if it's okay to touch somebody, but if they do feel comforted by touch, putting a hand on their shoulder, saying, hey, are you okay in this moment? Finding a way to get their attention. And I really think another way is just to have a really candid conversation with that person, just to say, hey, I really care. I care about you. I know this can be a stressful time for you. If you need any support, please let me know how I can help. So just letting them know that you're there for them can oftentimes be a really big change. Like I said, sometimes eating disorders can feel really isolating. So if someone knows that you're there to help them, can be really supportive. Also offering them space, like, hey, if you're not doing anything, do you want to come over and be together the day before a holiday, the day after a holiday? Let's watch a movie today. Something like that, but providing space for them to feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That is the only question we have in the Q&A. I know that in the chat, it looks like Kelsey had offered a really interesting option, I think, of considering virtual options when you're feeling overwhelmed. Do you want to talk on that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know the virtual world really took over the past couple of years, but I think that has been a really great growth and a really great benefit in the mental health field, because it has made health and support much more accessible for safety during the winter times, as well as for people who don't feel as comfortable traveling. So I highly encourage you, if you're looking for a support team or if you're looking for somebody, to ask if they do have virtual options and what that looks like if you're traveling, if the weather um, does become pretty dangerous and you can't get out. At Balance, we do have virtual and in-person options, and I know that a lot of treatment facilities are following that as well, just with the safety and health concerns that have been going on for the past couple of years. So I do highly recommend, if you're comfortable with virtual care, that is a really great option.
Yeah. And one last question for this little break. What are some ways that you suggest enjoying the holidays outside of food, other than food, if food is an overwhelming thing to be focused on?
Absolutely. Great question. So it kind of goes back into, what are our values? What do we enjoy? What are some of the hobbies that we really enjoy doing? If food feels really overwhelming, what crafts can you make? Again, I know when the virtual space became pretty large, a lot of people got into embroidering or knitting, crocheting. Can you do a gift swap with your friends where you all craft something together and swap with each other afterwards? Game nights can also be really fun, having people over to play charades or Settlers of Catan or whatever board game you might be interested in. Volunteering can be a really great option if you're really passionate about animals or community work. You can always reach out and see if there's any volunteer work in your community. And then another fun thing that me and my friends sometimes do is scavenger hunts around the city, just going around and looking for things, and just getting out and exploring where you live, exploring your environment. I think that sometimes we get so stuck in our routine. We were talking about routines earlier. We can get really stuck in our routines that it can be really fun to go and look at Christmas decorations or go and explore different shops that have popped up.
Those are great suggestions. Thank you.
All right. Anything else before we head to the next section? Are we good to go?
We're good to keep moving for now.
Awesome. All right. Festive intentions. What do you need? All right. So this holiday season, I really, really want you to focus on your needs this season. If you're having sensory concerns, what do you need in that moment? If you are having an argument with a loved one, what do you need in that moment? Really want you to take control of your narrative. It's your life, it's your story, and you do have the power. So take control of the narrative for your holiday season. I also want to shift the mindset from expectations to focusing on what's important to you and letting that lead how you spend your holiday season, redirecting your attention to the needs and a compassion-aligned self-care modality. Another thing to kind of talk about is, what is self-care? What does self-care look like? And I know that we really tend to romanticize self-care, being face masks or getting your nails done or doing your hair, getting your hair cut or treating yourself in some really large way. But sometimes self-care is as simple as getting out of bed. Sometimes self-care can look like taking a shower for the day, brushing your teeth, making sure that you're nourishing yourself, eating a food that maybe feels comfortable for you. So I also really want you to explore what self-care means to you and how you can show that to yourself. How do we do this? So I mentioned earlier some journaling prompts, and these are some questions that I encourage everyone to write down and really think about going into the next part of this holiday season. So what's important to you, and what's important to you about the holidays, and how can you reflect this during this season? What do those values look like? What do you want to do for yourself? And how can you prioritize yourself? How can you set apart some time for self-care? How can you make sure that you're able to take a shower if you want to? How can you make sure that you are meeting a meal plan or nourishing your body? And then what do you want for your family? And how can you realistically implement this into the holidays? So what do you want for your family? And can you have those discussions? Can you create a fostering environment where that can come to fruition? Really want everyone just to kind of think about these and think about what is really important for you and your family and what you want your expectations to be this holiday. Any other questions, comments, concerns, anything that is maybe sitting with folks at the end of our discussion, of our presentation, that they want to share with the folks that are here?
I'd love to ask Staci, as we're thinking about these questions and really giving some thought to what the holidays mean to us, can you offer some non-health and non-food related resolutions, because I think a lot of times, you were talking about this before, the holidays really become focused on resolutions and expectations that revolve around food or our bodies. So what are some things that we can focus on that
Yeah.
take us away from those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this kind of plays into the idea of self-care too, right? Of how we really romanticize what the New Year's comes to look like. So again, setting these expectations for you and really thinking about what you want in the new year. What do you want for yourself? It can be a resolution to maintain your mental health. So that can look like going to appointments, making sure that you're staying up to date on refilling medications if that's part of your treatment plan. It can be to find a new support group or find treatment in general, to show yourself love, right? Again, engaging in self care if you need it, or really learning who you are and how to love yourself. Maybe it's finding a new craft or a new hobby, to be a stress relief. Again, crafting is a really great thing. Gardening, if you have access to that. Um, Finding a new outlet for stress or something that makes you feel really good. You can also resolve to share your story, right? We were talking about narratives earlier. So really taking claim of your story. So it can be talk to a support system or a loved one about your story, or find a support group where you can share your story. Or maybe it's just reclaiming it to yourself right now and writing it for yourself. And that's great too. What else? I think really committing to your recovery, if that's where you're at, I resolved to stay committed to recovery is a really big one. And that's really hard. And if anyone else has any ideas, again, I'd love to hear them in the chat.
Yeah, we have one other question in the Q&A. What can I say to a loved one that doesn't want to travel to see family for the holidays because of all the food that is involved?
Hmm. And I'm wondering if you can provide support for that loved one. If you can say, maybe we can go to this event and we don't have to engage in the meal, or you and I can go eat the meal somewhere else. Or how can I prepare myself to sit with the meal? Would it be helpful if I sat right next to you and helped you eat? Not helped you eat, but you know what I mean, provided support while you ate. Or can we maybe do something virtual? Would you feel comfortable coming in and hanging out in a virtual space before we eat? And really feeling what they're comfortable with and what they're willing to do in the moment. And also just respecting their boundaries, I think is really important. But again, like we were saying earlier, I think providing that support and really letting them know that you are there for them, and that you'd be willing to help, and asking them what they need.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. That's a really great answer. It's good to remember to honor where they're at, and sometimes helping means listening.
Absolutely. And with that, sometimes I know sometimes we really want to solve other people's problems. We all care about our loved ones so deeply. But sometimes it is listening without offering suggestions. Sometimes it is just validating their experiences and saying, yeah, I hear you. That's really hard. Or that really sucks, but I'm here if you need someone to listen.
Yeah, yeah, that's really important. We did just have another question come in that I can actually answer. The question is it possible to have the slides and or transcript emailed afterwards? They had to leave because of an emergency. And yes,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
this webinar will be, yes, so sorry. I hope everything's okay.
Yes.
That's the most important thing. But the webinar will be posted on YouTube afterwards. So you will have access to the whole thing there on our Balance YouTube. I think that's all the questions that I have coming in.
I do see in the chat that Jessica said, I just want a drama-free holiday. And I want to validate that. I want to say that I hear that. Holidays can be really a lot of tension, a lot of people together, a lot of personalities together in a room, in a space. And I just really want to encourage you to find space to take care of yourself. We can't always control what other people say, what other people do. It makes it really hard. We can control what we do. And if you find that you need to leave a conversation, leave a conversation. If you find that you want to leave something early, that's okay. But really think about how you can take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, sorry. One more thing came in the chat. Kelsey said to identify some of your triggers and continue to explore what coping skills work for you. I think that's really smart. Maybe before you go into an event, and sometimes what we'll do is looking at a green light. This is when I know I feel really good. A yellow light being like, oh, I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed, and red being this is triggering me. I need to engage in a coping strategy right now. So maybe exploring those different levels for you before you go into one of these situations, and then coming up with a coping skill that could be really helpful for you in the moment, whether that's taking a walk, listening to a song, going to a loved one, whatever coping skill has worked for you. Encourage you to have that plan in your back pocket. All right. So, sorry, am I doing resources?
Oh yeah, if that's all right. If not, I
Yeah.
can, yeah, go
No,
for it.
absolutely, absolutely. So these are some resources that we have compiled. We do have some podcasts and some Instagram handles. So if you want to follow social media accounts that are pro recovery, pro health at every size, are really supportive and providing affirmations or support, we highly recommend you check these out. And again, I'm just going to kind of plug it in here too. If there's any Instagrams or podcasts that you feel like are not supporting your recovery, I really encourage you to unfollow those and maybe replace them with something that is a little bit more recovery focused. So, like Alexandra said, this will be on the YouTube channel afterwards. So please feel free to write these down, go back and look at them. They can be really great resources. Also, if you want to get to know us anymore on social media with Balanced, we do have a couple of Instagram handles and pages. So feel free to check us out at any of those sites as well.
Yeah, thank you. Um, Ekin, would you mind telling us a bit about some of the treatment programs that we offer here at Balance?
Absolutely. Well, overall, as we've said, Balance is an outpatient eating disorder treatment facility. That's going to mean a lot of different levels of care. Our highest being our day program, also known as PHP. A step from that would be our evening IOP, and our Saturday program. Those are the various schedules for programming. The Saturday can be a standalone added to any other level of care. A step down from programming, we have outpatient therapy groups. Those meet in the evenings once a week. And then a step from that, we have our individual nutritional supports, which could look like nutritional counseling, individual meal supports. And our whole goal is just to make this a really cohesive and seamless transition from level to level, just to make sure that recovery is always a long-term and sustainable goal. And we have a 20-minute free consultation call. And it's really a space to discuss what ambivalence there is in your way, if there are any sort of barriers, to maybe talk a little bit more transparently about what you're specifically struggling with, and see if we have any specific resources, and just to get a better idea of what the process could look like for you with Balance or anywhere else.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for stopping by and joining us today. We are really honored that you chose to spend this time with us. Thank you, Staci, for a wonderful presentation. It was so helpful. And we hope that everyone here enjoyed the webinar as much as we did, or I did. I should only speak for myself.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for coming.
If you would like to continue learning about recovery, eating disorders, or what treatment could look like for yourself or a loved one, there are lots of opportunities to get in touch with us. We'll put some information in the chat, but for individualized conversations, like Ekin was saying, reach out for that free consultation call. We'll put the link in the chat and we can answer any questions that you might have. Also, be sure to check out our emails. We have lots of exciting announcements and free resources like webinars and support groups that go out in those. Our next free support group will be on Friday, December 2nd at 12 p.m. with Balance's clinical director, Beck. And then we'll have another one on Saturday, December 10th at 11 a.m. with Balance's CEO and founder, Mulaney. And then you can always call us directly at 212-645-6903. So like I said, I'll make sure all that information is in the chat. There you go. And thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you, Staci. And we hope you have a great weekend and see you again soon.